Hello, Tom Maguire here again. So I have read some really good books recently. I've got some really good ones coming up as well. But today I just want to do a quick review on Captain Tom's life lessons. So this is a short book. I've got some things I want to say about it that are very, very relevant to personal development, which is what this channel is about at the end of the day. I've got some very positive things to say about it, so stick around for that. But I also have a little bit of something sinister to end on as well. So make sure you watch to the end to hear about that. Please like and subscribe, it's really helpful. More people are doing that recently, which is really, really appreciated. Really good. So at one point this book was going to be called apparently Eat Your Porridge, which I think is quite good because that's kind of along the lines of something like Captain McCraven's Make Your Bed. It's a bit like Jordan Peterson, what he always says about tidying your room as well. And I think it's nice because it kind of goes along with the fact that this book, although it's kind of a bit more gentle, a bit less kind of hard ass kind of telling you what to do, because Captain Tom was just a nice gentle old man at the end of the day. He was also someone who came from a different time, so he does have that kind of understanding of discipline and effort and that sort of thing, and people are often put off by that, but this book isn't like that. But I think it's impossible to get away from the fact that those kind of old classic ideas of discipline and hard work and gratitude are always there, no matter who it comes from. And I think it does run through this book quite nicely, but it's the way he's done it, it's the way he's written it that comes across really well and is really good and really useful. So he served in Burma in World War II. My grandfather also served in Burma, so I find that very interesting. It's considered the forgotten war, but very, very interesting if you ever get a chance to do any reading around that. He raised somewhere between 35 and 38 million for NHS charities during the COVID outbreak in Britain. So he did like 100 laps of his garden, and he just set off with a target of wanting to raise like £1,000 or something. It just went crazy. It kind of went viral on the internet and everyone got involved. He was on the news and all sorts of things and ended up just raising millions and millions, which is absolutely fantastic. And I will come at the end of this review to the sort of slightly more sinister side of that. But I want to talk about the book first and why it's so good, so please bear with for that. He was knighted in July 2020 by the Queen, which is fantastic. And he did a song with Michael Ball. He covered You'll Never Walk Alone, that classic, which made it to #1 as well, so that was fantastic. He was made an honorary colonel of the British Army as well, and there was a fly past for his 100th birthday as well. But sadly, he died in February 2021 of coronavirus. He was not yet 101. I think his birthday was in July or something. So yeah, he didn't quite make 101. But yeah, very, very inspired. Very, very inspirational bloke. I can remember at the time being really inspired by him, really uplifted by him. It was a fantastic story, and I think it's really nice from a personal development point of view as well, from a self-help point of view, to see someone who, okay, he's kind of had success throughout his life and he's been hardworking. And if you read his book, you'll understand that he never made a huge amount of money or anything like that for himself. I think he jokes at one point, he says that he used to tell people as a kid he'd like to be a millionaire, but he never actually achieved that. But obviously in some ways he did, because he raised the millions for the NHS. Although it wasn't his money, of course, but he kind of makes a joke about that. But he does sort of talk about being successful in his own way and being grateful for what he had. And one of the big points of the book for me was not comparing ourselves to other people. He says how people today, he sympathises with young people, how they compare themselves to other people, and how when he was younger he had what he had and he just appreciated it, and he realised that it was within his means, etc, etc. And I think we can learn a lot from that attitude and that viewpoint. But like I say, it's not a judgmental self-help book. He's very understanding of people's struggles nowadays. He's understanding of how people struggle with sort of screen time all the time. And like I say, comparing themselves to other people and finding it difficult to step away from that. He talks about how he tried to bring his children up, how, you know, if they were climbing a tree and they're in a precarious position, rather than panicking like his wife may have done at the time, he'd kind of make a joke and just calmly say something like, you know, bring a handsaw up next time and you can bring some of the branches down or whatever. And because he wanted to try and encourage his kids to sort of take, you know, careful risks and kind of get out there and do things, which I think is another important thing. You know, we can tend to try and wrap each other up in bubble wrap too much. But it's getting that balance, isn't it? He talks a lot about how we should respect our bodies, particularly as he's been older, how, a bit like a classic car, we take longer to warm up and we need to sort of be mindful of that. He talks about eating porridge every day and how that was kind of a staple for him and how he thinks that's probably helped him live a bit longer. He talks about the fact that he didn't drink alcohol as well. He says that the men in his family were traditionally quite kind of lightweight. They couldn't really cope with alcohol too much. And he once tried to drink to show off to a girl years and years ago, and he was so ill for the next day that it put him off for life, and he didn't drink. So I would imagine that had a big impact on his longevity. We know that alcohol is a poison. If you're someone who's able to drink in moderation and kind of look after yourself, then that's fine. No one's saying to live like a monk, but I should imagine that was a big factor in his old age. He talks a lot about how he always moved as well. He was always keeping moving. So even if he was on a day off or whatever, he'd find jobs around the house, in the garden, and movement was always important to him. And I relate to that as well. I'm someone who, even if I've got a day off from exercising or a day off from work, I'll still find jobs around the house, cutting the grass, tidying things up, doing things, painting the house, painting the inside of the house. There's always something to do that can keep you moving. And I think hopefully that's quite a healthy thing to do rather than being sat around and sedentary. But yeah, really fantastic book. Highly recommend it. It's one of those short books. I listened to it on Audible, really nicely narrated by, who's that famous actor? I can't remember his name. He's really well known. I can see him in my head. I will edit his name in afterwards. But yeah, there has been a bit of controversy around the money that was raised for his charity. I think the family have been investigated as to how the money's been spent. There's apparently a bit of suspicion around whether they've been paying themselves to some degree. The way sort of charities work in this country, there are ways of kind of paying for certain things like management and etc. etc. So that takes the shine off a little bit when you hear about that. Obviously it wasn't Captain Tom who is responsible for that. He just went out and did the hard work and raised the money, but it's a bit sad to think that some of that may have been abused and some of that money may not have got to where it needs to have got to. So I hope that isn't the case, but that seems to be something that's ongoing at the minute. But other than that, I would ignore that and I would just listen to the fact that he's the guy who wrote the book. He hasn't been corrupt. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's an old school gentleman who's lived a very interesting life, and to live to 100 years old and to achieve what he achieved at the very end of his life, I think is very inspiring and exciting as well. So why not give his book a read and just take some of his life lessons and just make the most of things. Basically, this channel, like I said before, is about reading and listening to books, but it's about personal development. I put these videos on so that my kids can have something to laugh at their old dad later on in life. They can look back at some of the books that I've read and enjoyed and where I've got some of my opinions from and some of my motivation from, and hopefully that will help them as well. Hopefully it'll help you a little bit. Please like and subscribe. I'll be back again soon with the next great book that I've read. Thank you very much. Bye.